So it seems everything is in order. If order, we can say, I don't know, if we can include in the concept of order, me screwing up my OBS and like whatever not showing anywhere, nothing. It's okay. Welcome everyone that, I don't know, that is just enthusiastic about some random ball guy trying to make sense something in Spanish in English. As far as I know, this is the only show that does it, which is mine. Welcome to another episode of Casual Conversations with me, your friend Carlz. So, basically, just a week went by since I did my Spanish episode about my beloved Alien franchise. I don't think that franchise on itself needs any more introduction. So this is just one of the biggest horror franchises of all time. But what led me back a week ago to talk about it, I'm gonna go through this quickly, was particularly the Marvel comics. So currently Marvel has the rights, property, whatever you want to call it, for the Alien IP, I guess it is, right? So they released a couple of volumes of the Alien comics in which, several things happened, but basically what I saw in these latest like comic deliveries from Marvel was how I noticed, or I asked myself a handful of questions, which were like, okay, why are these comics good, or what do they make them interest, right? So I started developing this sort of theory, not a theory, but I want an idea that I wanted to try by looking at the movie itself, the first one, right? Something curious happened on the way to the Nostromo. You see what I did there? So basically, after I rewatched the first one since quite a long time, something funny happened, which I started to notice the trends or tropes that have become common in the Alien franchise. So I developed this idea that there are basically three main, you can call them tropes, or I call them like pillars, like holy pillars of what makes an alien product, right? So I branded these three pillars as having the plot having to do with the xenomorphs, right, the main antagonists of the series. Two, having to do with Weyland or Weyland Yutani, which is basically, it's not the main antagonist, but it's like the ghost that hits behind everything. And the third one was the existence in any alien work of synthetics, right? In the alien universe, synthetics are these robots, these highly developed robots that they always play some role in any alien product. So in those Marvel comics that I was mentioning, you actually see these three elements. And what's the point of these three elements? That it seems that you can move them around. Like you can keep creating many or whatever what you want alien like storylines in different mediums or with different topics. But as long as you cover these three elements, it seems that you are okay. Does this make any alien product good? Not necessarily. You need to start like to juggle, mix and match all of these elements correctly, right? So for example, in one of these comic books, it was about this family that gets stranded in this ice planet, right? And they were like, of course, researching the facehuggers, I think, in particular. So they were working for Weyland Yutani, right? They release the xenomorph, which start like their traditional killing spree, right? And I was noticing that there was no synthetic in that story. So I found it really curious. And here's the classic spoiler in all of my conversations. Turns out the quote unquote father figure of that small family was indeed a synthetic. So you start developing these connections in between, right? How these three elements sort of play among themselves, right? They take different protagonism, they take different forms and shapes, but they interplay among themselves in a really funny way. Like you can have, let's say, a synthetic being a reflection of a relationship. So in the first Marvel comic that I'm mentioning, this more advanced synthetic took sort of the role of the father, right? So you sort of create the concept of fatherhood in this fictional synthetic sort of avatar or representation, then it takes a whole different meaning, right? How is a child supposed to feel any sense of belonging with like a robot, right? So then you go mix and match. Then you go, for example, like how does the xenomorph out of these three elements take a more noticeable stance, right? And that's when you get things like Alien Resurrection, right? Where the xenomorph is even more important, how it evolves and how it becomes what it is, right? And finally, how do you put Wayland into the mix, into the fray? That is the hardest one because it takes like sort of a backstep. Wayland and Wayland Yutani is sort of like the background of it all, right? So I thought about these three elements, and I start rewatching the first movie. I mean, after I rewatched the first movie, and of course, watching the first movie immediately makes you think, okay, Alien doesn't seem to have one overreaching plot line or like argument that goes through all of the works, right? So it seems like Alien on itself, it just spontaneously create different sort of products that are not necessarily interlinked among each other, right? But after I finished the first movie, I thought about Prometheus, and I thought, oh, okay, so eventually they did try to create a central sort of like backbone of the Alien franchise, which they did in Prometheus, right? So for who hasn't seen Prometheus, it's sort of like the first one in a timeline kind of way. So during Prometheus, they work on the idea that these beings called the engineers, they sort of use a kind of like a biogenetic element, or like not necessarily a weapon, but they have this biogenetic ingredient that is capable of intermixing or like mixing, however you say it. It's capable of like taking apart biological matter and creating a new one. What they did with Prometheus, which was something that I loved about the movie itself, was that it was a sort of an explanation of the beginning of the Alien franchise, right? You have like a big, not antagonist or enemy, but like a big storyline beyond the xenomorph of Wayland itself, right? Because these engineer types, they had a motivation, right? They had a purpose. They didn't create the xenomorph just because. So from the beginning, you sort of start thinking about like, okay, so the xenomorphs, are they biological weapons? Why did they do it? So Prometheus, about everything, is a movie about questions. So many questions, but you can see in it the genesis of the xenomorph, the motivations, Wayland himself, and the point about the movie and why it's so important is not because of its existence. I think it's a really good movie. It asks all of these interesting questions, right? Like, why did the engineers do what they do, and like, what does it mean for you to discover that your creator is sort of like an objective, real, not person, but like entity, right? So God or creation is not a metaphor or something abstract. It's real. It's these guys, right? Like these crazy mutant type guys. I mean, not mutant, they're just alien types. So something funny happened, not on the way to the Nostromo, but in the way to Alien Covenant, right? We had a potential origin for the franchise, which meant, on hindsight, that everything that you could make after that had to be linked to this Genesis. What Prometheus did was to introduce the idea that there was something more beyond anything. So if you go back to Alien 1 through 4, you can see that the xenomorphs are just like slasher villains, right? It's okay. Weyland is just this like company, like ghost company, like working its way through classic like big company tropes, like they are manipulating, like amassing power, controlling like industry, whatever it is, right? And synthetics themselves, they were just like robots, and they were functional. If you see Alien 1 through 4, they are functional to the plot of each one of those movies. Even though in Alien Resurrection you get this like tiny glimpse of the future of the synthetics, where you get like Cole, I think was the character's name, that sort of introduced the idea that synthetics in that future, they have become a little bit of self-aware. So you have the overarching, I think that's how you pronounce it, between the beginning of the synthetics from Prometheus, right? That they were just created to serve Weyland, to Alien Resurrection, where they sort of get some sort of like independence of self-consciousness, if you want to call it like that, right? But what's the point here? If Prometheus had been successful, right, we might be having a whole different set of alien products coming out of Prometheus. So I make myself the question, and I often do it when I meet people that had similar love for the franchise, like, okay, let's ask ourselves, where is this going? You know, like basically we know, I mean, before Prometheus, we didn't know where was this going, like were the xenomorphs ever gonna run out? Were they ever gonna find like a true weakness? Were they ever gonna, how can you say, like end? Would they ever be like Alien the final battle, right? Like Alien the last encounter, like Alien the last showdown, however you want, like it would be happen. Like before Prometheus, like we didn't know that. After Prometheus, there was a possibility of it. But here we saw a communion of different things. One of them being like the industry, right? The industry of movies themselves, right? Like the manipulation of these storylines, how flexible they really are, how they move according to not only reviews and ideas, but markets. So after Prometheus failed, they basically killed that with Covenant. And that is something that is really, really interesting. It's something that is really, how can you say, revealing on how these things work. It's amazing. They just ended that storyline right there with Alien Covenant, right? What were the engineers' motivation? Fuck all that. We don't know. They're all dead, right? Like what created the xenomorph, and what was the motive? Oh, it was just the what's his name? Patrick, the Michael Fassbender's symbiote character. What was the xenomorph's origin? Oh, just this guy. He spent like 200 years mixing and matching DNA until he met another human, and he created the final xenomorph. which in hindsight, it's really underwhelming how the first perfect xenomorph appears in Alien Covenant, and just like, oh, there he is, oh, or it is, all right. What happened with Weyland? Fuck, we don't know. He died in Prometheus, right? Who cares? Who cares? And what happened with the synthetics? Patrick, or whatever his name is. Oh, he was just following his programming, and he went crazy, and he got obsessed with creating the perfect life form. Which is something that also appears in Romulus in the future, right? So basically, what's the point here? Between Prometheus and Alien Covenant, they basically killed that storyline. That they basically killed the origin of Alien, and they make it irrelevant once more. So if you jump to the future, right, all the way to Alien Romulus, right, you can see how this actually goes into an effect. You can see how, for example, in Alien Romulus, let's take the Holy Trinity that I said. So Weyland is still there, right? There's still like a big company, and is it relevant, like who is leading the company or how exactly the company is working? Like, it's not relevant. They're just a company, right? They own like the mining. I think in Romulus they were in some mining stuff, right? Like, they own it, they run it, whatever. So what happened with the synthetics? Again, the protagonist, quote unquote, brother is like a last generation synthetic, and it also works as sort of like an emotional support for the protagonist, and they sort of like challenge his personhood or humanity, like, is he a person, is he not, like. And what happened with the alien? Again, is the main antagonist, is the slasher element, and it kills a lot of people, but at the end it has some sort of like intake of novelty just for that movie on its own. So as Romulus ends, which is a great movie on its own, you end up like, okay, this was a great horror movie. Like, it was greatly shot. It had amazing effects, like great ambience, right? Decent acting, decent scares. But in the end, it just ends and that's it, right? With Alien, oh, that was like a little high pitch. With Alien, you don't ask no more what's coming next. It had become completely irrelevant what comes next. Even if you go back to Alien 1 through 4, so you think that either Weyland or the story of the synthetics or the story of the xenomorphs was what kept those movies together as 1 through 4? No, it was Ellen Ripley, right? And going back to Alien 1, if you watch Alien 1, which is of course the big daddy or mommy, like the real blueprint to the franchise as a movie franchise, not as a story, Ripley was just a character. Like, no character in the original Alien, it's like particularly like noticeable or like overwhelming. They were just people, and that was part of the brilliance of the movie on itself, right? They were just people, so they faced this thing and they had to overcome it, and that's it. Nothing more and nothing less. So Ripley becoming a protagonist of like a 4-part movie, like, is really not so important. If you think about from after 1, all of the like the glue that kept Ripley being the protagonist was like, oh, she experienced a xenomorph encounter and she survived. They sort of imply that between 2 and 3, right, that the importance of that is that the xenomorph is supposed to be the perfect killing machine. So how come it failed, right? Yeah, but that's barely hinted. Basically, that they make that just to make Ripley be there and have her be a glue that puts everything together. But if you jump back to the future, or not to the future, to the present, you sort of realize that that happens a lot in different forms or ways. It happens in the comics and it happens in the movies. Now, people are surviving the xenomorph left and right. So, what's the point there? And you sort of realize that there's no point to it. There's no point to it. Me thinking about it just brought me back to question whatever I liked about Alien at the beginning. So when I was a kid, I was probably too young to be watching Alien anyways, but I did because that's what you do when you are younger, right? You like science fiction, like I like Star Trek and I like space and everything. You like science fiction, you like horror movies, right? You like Friday the 13th or anything. Alien was that popular. I wasn't born yet when the first one came out. Not even like, I think I was born even after part 3. I might have been on an old enough to understand whatever I was watching by the time 4 came out. But anyways, you watch it, and Alien, to me personally, it just tapped this primal sort of fear or like a general obsession that I had with space and aliens. Aliens in general, as a not as a concept, but well, they are a concept. They are not a fact yet. But aliens to me were like something that I felt so passionate about. I dreamt with aliens. Like I had the what still is one of my dreams to be alive when first contact happens, right? Like all of those things, they were just there for me. So there's no obsession without this with anything that is unknown, without this risk of it creating this relationship of fear of the unknown, right? That was Alien for me. That was the concept of aliens to me. So Alien, the first one, it got imprinted in my mind because it's just so beautiful. It's just so organic. It's so real, so touchy. Can you say it like that? Like the way Alien 1 is made, it's made to be a memorable experience, but because of a whole set of elements that have nothing to do with the main plot of the movie. That's sort of the thing. That's sort of the idea. So Alien 1 is great, not because like, oh, there's these perfect killing machines called xenomorphs, and like they were created by the engineers, even though that's a really interesting idea. That is not there at all. Even though they find like a chip from an engineer, back then nobody knew like it was an engineer. It was just an alien thing. That's why the movie is called Alien, right? Everything we saw was just alien to us, even though they were already in space. But like, who's counting? That was the whole point of the movie. And rewatching it now, 2025, it's great. It's great to watch Alien now, as it is great to watch any movie that balances with respect and like in an inspired way between doing things in an organic way, like in an organic, natural way, because it's built to last. Like that happens to me with movies like Lord of the Rings, right? And so everything about it stands the test of time, because the whole point of it was to make a visual nightmare. It was to, okay, you are scared of this, We're gonna make it believable. We're gonna make your nightmares true, right? And to make a nightmare true, you need to ground it. Like, it was amazing to watch the opening scene of Alien, which is just this, and they repeated it in like Prometheus and in Covenant. Like they repeated it several times. They just show you the ship, right? They show you it's there. They show you the consoles. They show you the panels. They show you the cables. That's the opening shot of Alien, right? Here's the chip, this real, right? And everything that happens after that, there are hints of everything that I said that became the Holy Trinity of Alien, right? Like, so the first synthetic in Alien franchise, right? Bilbo Baggins, Ian Holm, right? You can see him like doing things that are directly in favor of Weyland-Yutani's plan, right? But that's all hindsight. Back then, it's just like this robot, okay? He's protecting company property. But that concept didn't really evolve until later. You can see the crew of the Nostromo like complaining about working hours, like about wages, complaining about the company. So there's a hint that Weyland-Yutani is a bad company, right? And of course you can see the xenomorph, and like you can see the first ideas of it being really hard to kill, with like its blood being acid and everything like that, right? They are all there, but they are this just moment in time and space where some nightmare became true and sort of became imprinted for the history of cinema in general, right? And if you take Alien, the first Alien, fourth, how do you call a group of four things, not a trilogy or like, well, but if you take the first 4 Alien movies, and as I said before, they are linked together only by Ellen Ripley, you see this holy triad becoming truth and becoming a constant, right? I don't know, and I'm not like necessarily aware, or like it's not something that I know, but I believe that when they deal with new alien products, they do have this sort of min or max, or like limits, or like general concepts, because we saw it through the Prometheus failure, right? We saw it through the movie's failure, how basically now they can't go there. They can't go to a big overarching, I think it's overarching, but they can't go to a big alien main plot or storyline. They can't. And they never do. And we can keep seeing alien product after alien product after alien product, and it has sort of become a product that is flexible enough, right, to live forever. So in the end, this whole exploration I did by starting from the Marvel comics, going back to the origin, going through Prometheus and Covenant, and then remembering Romulus, it sort of shows you that whether this is something they are aware or not, they clearly created a concept that, in a way, even like the xenomorph itself, it has become a perfect being. A concept so flexible that has no end. So they can keep creating and creating and creating alien products, and they are never like afraid of running out of it. One like tiny hint of not necessarily an end, but something that would necessarily be relevant, comes at the end of Alien Resurrection, right? because as far as I know, Alien Resurrection is the only alien movie that eventually touches Earth as a concept, right? The ship crashes on Earth, so it will be the first time, sort of like the aliens come to Earth. Besides the whatever spin-off or whatever bullshit they have created before, and that would necessarily mean something. Not necessarily. Now that I think about it, they could come away with some other stuff, but they would have to make it important. And thinking about that on itself is funny because it makes you wonder, like, will they ever do a movie or a series dedicated to the evolution of the synthetics, for example? It would be really off-brand to focus on the synthetics, not on the xenomorphs. Will they ever go back to, I don't know, talking about the xenomorphs? Will they ever evolve? Will they ever change? That on itself is funny too, because as I was watching Covenant, I couldn't help but thinking about something really curious, that the xenomorphs on themselves are like kind of like OP, you know. So I was like, they might be too OP. they might sort of like be OP to the point of being boring. So it's never a good thing to think about it, but like to think it in that way, or like coming to the realization that this thing has no end, because in some way it makes almost any alien product like a little bit more irrelevant. Like, so why do I care about this particular synthetic or this particular xenomorph outbreak? Why do I care? Because, for example, in Alien Resurrection, you have like the big climax of the movie where like Grima Wormtongue goes like, "Oh, you have given the queen the biggest gift from them all. Like, she can like now breathe without using a face hugger. Like she has a womb. The queen has a womb, right?" But what happened the second after that? This new queen is destroyed. The new queen is destroyed, and like, fuck, she doesn't exist anymore. Next. You see, so this whole journey through Alien, is my latest journey through Alien, is just like it made me think about things that are already part of it, and it made me think how I'm gonna keep loving it, and I'm gonna keep consuming it, regardless, because back then, years ago, right? Years ago, I was a kid. Well, I, in some way, I still have that fear in me, but years ago, this original movie tapped into a primal fear that I had all of my childhood, and it portrayed it in the most perfect and iconic way that stayed with me forever. And I wonder if other Alien fans sort of go through similar things. So why would like an Alien fan, for example, hate Prometheus? That is something that always sort of like surprised me. Something I couldn't really understand. Why would an Alien fan hate Prometheus? Why would you hate the idea of knowing the beginnings of the franchise? Or like, why would you hate the concept of engineers? Like, somebody, like the cinemas had to come from somewhere, right? Like, they had to. And why would you hate the idea of knowing that? I sort of never understood that. But to be honest, now under this brand new light, in a way, you see that maybe people were right on not hating necessarily, but like rejecting the concept of Prometheus. Like rejecting the concept of Alien having a beginning, because if Alien has a beginning, most certainly can have an end. So maybe people were right on hating it. Were the creators right on sort of like pulling out the rug? Is that's the expression, right? Like pulling the rug out of that concept, and sort of like erasing the chance or possibility of it becoming something else, perhaps. I don't know if being wrong is the right way of putting it, but like it certainly is disappointing, because who knows when we will see again like discussions about Wayland or discussions about the synthetics. I don't know. I don't know when we'll be seeing it again. I don't know if we need to see it again. I don't know if we need to see a new discussion about that. I don't know. But the premise of my current theory of the Holy Trinity of alien being so flexible means that you don't really need to worry about it. And that is like the big conclusion of the reflection, right? You don't really need to worry about it. For better or for worse, we are living in a reality where, like, okay, if this movie did bad, okay, let's wait for the next one. There's no compromise. There's no anything to sort of, how can you say it? You don't need to reach any objective except financial success. It sounds bad, I know, but it's true. So Romulus credits roll, you're like, hey, I've seen a great alien movie, a great horror movie, or a great sci-fi movie, right? But do I frankly care for Romulus 2? Should I care for Romulus 2? And that's only another proof of what I've been thinking and talking during this episode. Right? There's no weight to an alien product. Is it good or is it bad? I guess it's case based. It could be bad because basically it means that you can create really shitty products and like not be afraid of it. It can be good because at the same time it allows you to create really good standalone products like Romulus, right? It's in between because you'll never get the answer to the big questions that they try to introduce with Prometheus. So you get everything in between. Which I guess is a good thing, right? I guess it's not gonna end until we finally actually meet like real, like full blown intelligent or like a full living alien form IRL. I guess we'll have to wait until that point in time to see if they finally go like, okay, we gotta finish this. Our alien now just looks stupid. Now that the real aliens are here, like, shit, we can't keep pretending this is real, right? At least we know the companies like Wayland exist now and they are real and they are scary. And AI is coming for us, so I guess we can say synthetics are on their way. We're only missing the aliens to have our own little slasher movie reality show among ourselves. That would be quite a show. which I hope, yeah, I mean, I could be part of it. I would be okay getting betrayed by fucking Bilbo Baggins, or getting like beheaded by a cool monster. Anything but working for Weyland Yutani like Paul Reiser in Aliens, right? That is just a cartoon of a human being that I wish not to be. And one of all the things in Alien that I do not need to be on space or have like a real fantasy scenario. You can just be a company douche drone for free right now. No ship, no space, only horror. But anyways, that's my conversation for today. Great franchise. I'm gonna love it forever. Can't wait to see whatever they do next. And I'm always going to miss Prometheus and that big promise of the engineers and the mystery behind them. I do feel blessed by sort of like the self-cessed kiss between Michael Fassbender. I guess that's a weird, but nevertheless, a silver lining. So thank you all for listening. And I just see you next time on a spaceship that hopefully doesn't look like the Nostromo, because it looks really uncomfortable. See you all next time. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.